This is lesson 4 for year 12 physics, motion under mechanics, and this lesson is on vectors and addition of vectors. So, what are vectors? Vectors are physical quantities with both size and direction. And the way we represent a vector is by drawing an arrow. So the size of an arrow is the size of the vector, and the direction of the arrow tells you which direction the vector is on. That's the head and that's the tail of the arrow. Now, rules for adding vectors. Vectors are always added head to tail. The resultant vector goes from start to finish and has a double arrow. For example, if you want to add vector A, which is 4 meters per second in this direction, and vector B, which is 3 meters per second in another direction, A plus B, you add them head to tail, and the resultant vector goes from start to finish. So that's the length of the resultant vector for A plus B. Or, without drawing arrows, you can also write a vector equation, that is 4 plus 3. When you're adding vectors in the same direction, you just add the two numbers and you put the same direction therein. Now, in case there are two vectors which are in opposite directions, then the rule is you find the difference between the two vectors and you put the sign of the larger. So this is A, mine is B, so it's in the opposite direction, and that's your resultant vector, which is 1 meter per second. Or by writing a vector equation, you get 4 plus 3 in the opposite direction. The difference of 4 and 3 is 1. 4 is pointing to the right, so your resultant vector also points to the right. You can also have vectors which are at an angle to each other, and I've got two vectors which are 90 degrees to each other. So your A plus B addition is commutative. You can do B plus A, which is the same as A plus B. So that's my A, that's the head. This is the tail of B. You add them head to tail, and then the resultant goes from start to finish. The double arrow, you use Pythagoras theorem. So the length of the resultant is square root of 4 squared plus 3 squared. Often, when you have vectors, you also need the direction. So the direction is, which I teach my students, it's where the tails meet. Okay, so it's that angle. So that one way of finding that angle is tan inverse of 3 over 4, and you get about 37 degrees.